Talofa Māori, kia ora, tēnā tātou katoa. Ko Riiti, Conway ahau, he uri no Tuvalu, Kiribati, te Mananui a Kiwa. Ko Taikawa taku tāne, ko tū te mākohu taku tamariki tuatahi, ko taku pōtiki tēnei. He uri no Otako, ka te māmoe waitaha me kaitahu rātou. He pau Tōkeke Māori ahau no WellSouth, and basically, kia ora, my name's Riiti. I'm a project manager for health equity at WellSouth, and really happy to be talking with my mate over here, Emma May, about our equity session at WellSouth called Wānanga Tōkeke. Nō reira, tēnei te mihi atu kia koutou katoa. So just want to have a quick shout out to Ellie from WellSouth for mentioning our mahi to Collaborative Aotearoa. We're very privileged to be here and share our mahi. So, Emma May, I'll just let my mate Emma May here introduce herself.
A tēnā koutou te whānau nui o te motu, koe me mei Loretz tōku ingoa, he uri tēnei no, te taitonga, koe o te waipounamu me murihiku o ko kainga. Ko auraki te mauka, ko waitaki te awa, ko takitimu me uruau ka waka, ko kaitahu kā te māmoe me waitaha ka iwi, ko kai te rue hiki hiki te hapu, anei ko o tākau me te rau aroha ngā marae. So tēnei te mihi kia koutou. Similar to Riiti, I'm not a project manager, but I'm a project coordinator of health equity. And essentially, my mahi within this is always about my people from the south, my Māori people, ngā iwi Māori. So if I can ever suggest a great time to be influencing our people to be in healthcare, I am pretty young in the services. So no mai, hoki mai, no here, ki here, all good. But yeah, I'll pass it back to Riiti and she'll just introduce our kaupapa that we've been doing down in the southern region of the country.
Awesome. So we're just going to start with a quick overview and history of how we started Wānanga Tōkeke at WellSouth, and then we'll have a quick group discussion, probably 10 minutes, divide the room up very quickly, and then we'll have some, probably another 10 minutes, maybe just under 10 minutes for feedback and review, because everybody else will be trying to come back in at the end of their sessions. Yeah, Wānanga Tōkeke. So Tōkeke is the word for equity that WellSouth uses. Wānanga Tōkeke was born out of the results of our annual practice managers survey towards the end of 2022. And I guess our 80-something practices were surveyed and asked this question: what does health equity mean to you? And a few themes came out of the answers, but the majority of them said something along the same lines: we need to treat people all the same way, which is not the definition of equity. They were talking about equality. And then, because it is the South, there are some opinionated people there. So we had a few comments that were quite vocal about the fact that ethnicity or any creed or religion should not matter when treating people in healthcare. So those were all very interesting results of our survey. And I guess because it identified a gap in the knowledge of what equity was about, which, just to refresh, equity is recognizing that people in Aotearoa have different levels of advantage, which require approaches and resources to get equitable, different approaches and resources to get equitable health outcomes. And that's just on the Ministry of Health website. So we were quite shocked that this was not common knowledge. And so in November last year, I presented to a practice managers forum in a small rural town called Balclutha in the lower, just south of Dunedin, a titled presentation, 45 minutes long, called Decolonizing Primary Care. That corridor covered the very obvious definition, just to refresh them, and then I introduced the concept of decolonization as a tool or skill that can be picked up and applied within primary care to achieve equitable health outcomes. At this hui, I was met with a very disengaged crowd, a few frowns, and I saw people exercising. Have you guys seen that exercise where you take your eyeballs and you roll them to the back of your head? I was impressed. But yeah, since then, decolonizing primary care, that 45-minute presentation has now morphed into the second half of Wānanga Tōkeke, which covers the local context of Māori history in the lower South Island, and legislative requirements for why equities should be important in these practices, and then further exploring unconscious bias in relation to Te Tiriti or Waitangi principles. So by the new year, MMA, who's part of our Tōkeke project management, project coordinator team, soon to be project management team, they set their team priorities and planning for the year, and equity education was part of this. So I thought, well, let's work together on this. And it was perfect because practices had actually requested practical skills to help them build confidence to engage with their patients. So elements of MMA's presentation cover mihi mihi, foundations of Te Ao Māori, and these sessions help them understand how to navigate aspects of Te Ao Māori which would have left them confused or unsure or just not confident of how to conduct themselves. So she offered practical examples of what to say or do in clinical situations. And then I came in with the very depressing, serious topic of decolonizing primary care. But over time, people warmed up, and and I unfortunately had some health issues, but MMA stepped up and delivered the whole 3 hours. And when I got back, we had a look over the evaluation, and we started to get some really good feedback, which she'll talk about later. So to date, a quarter of the WellSouth, 80-something WellSouth practices across the lower half of the South Island have received this 3-hour workshop that we deliver. It's completely free. It's delivered as flexibly as we can. Unfortunately, we preferred to do in person, even though online was probably preferred by many of them. But there are already lots of online equity education resources. So we thought, let's try and do an in-person one, more personable. And so, fitting in with what practices wanted, if they wanted us to come to their practice, if they wanted us to do it in the nighttime, outside of working hours, we tried to do that for them. And then we, of course, offered some kai, because the worst thing that I can think of is being a clinician, very, very tired, fixing patients all day, and then at the end of the day, you're hungry, you're starving. And so we offered some food as well, and I think that was a bit of a draw card. And then I guess the more people came, the more we realized that we probably needed to build a bit more on what we were presenting, because 3 hours is not enough time to cover the entirety of Māori health equity education. So I guess what is the future of Wānanga Tōkeke? We aim to build on our initial Wānanga Tōkeke session by delivering more in-depth modules focused on primary Māori health, Pacific health, rainbow community, rural and other priority populations. And because evidence informs best practice, we are also carrying out an evaluation, which is what Emma's doing, so she can talk more about that.
Kia ora, Riiti. So like she said, currently we're in a bit of a phase of an evaluation, and this is simply so that we can start proving to people that we're actually doing the job that we said we were going to do. Part of that is essentially just a very basic evaluation form at the moment. And this is some of the feedback that we have received so far. You'll probably see that in a couple of those speech bubbles, it mentions that this is the best form of equity education they've had so far. And I think essentially that stems from the fact that a lot of our clinicians and even a lot of our administration staff in primary care have had Te Tiriti o Waitangi training over and over again. They're aware of what the concept concept of unconscious bias is, but now they know what it is, they just don't know how to do it. And so essentially, like Riiti has already said, we try to give them practical skills that they can use in their daily practice where they're not having to put one hat on for a Māori person, take it off for a non-Māori, and then put on a Pacific hat to Pacific people either. And so the main point of view that I like to take when talking about Te Ao Māori is that even though Te Ao Māori directly translates to the Māori world, it is actually the same world, we essentially just look at it differently. And if you can understand why we look at it differently, then you can understand why we do things the way we do them. And then from that, you should be able to understand us and therefore work with us, which I think has been a really big kōrero from some of the previous presentations so far. I'll let you guys read that because it looks a lot smaller on the screen than I thought it would. But essentially what we try to aim to do is make sure that these sessions are always responsive to the staff we're teaching. But also these are the same staff who are predominantly Pākehā. And so when it comes to conversations around colonisation, there's a lot of guilt and there's a lot of hesitancy to listening because, I'm the bad guy. Even though I wasn't alive in the 1800s, I must be blamed for this. Essentially, we take the point of view of, actually, Māori, yes, as the colonised people already have intergenerational trauma, but for non-Māori people, you have the intergenerational trauma of being the coloniser, and that comes with a lot of heaviness and a lot of hurt as well. So how can we collectively start working towards a system that benefits all of us rather than perpetuating the same negative outcomes? And that's essentially what we capture, and I think a lot of our feedback has also captured that as well. I could have enough feedback for about 4 slides, so for now, we'll just keep it at these nice 4 comments. From this, we're going to open it up to the room. Essentially, we've got pātai to try and encourage you all to think about how you could create your own forms of Wānanga Tōkeke. Last week, I've just spent some time at the Hawke's Bay Health Symposium, where I've learnt about their form of Māori health education, which comes in the form of Te Kura Nui. And that was created by Ngāti Kahungunu, for Ngāti Kahungunu, to be taught to people not from Ngāti Kahungunu. I think the biggest problem that I face as a kaitahu Māori living in kaitahu whenua is a lot of our Māori down there are actually transplants from the rest of the country. We've got more North Islanders in the South Island than we do South Islanders. And so I can't just teach the tikanga and the kawa of kaitahu because we also have to accommodate to the tikanga and kawa of the North Island as well. And that's a main part. So to keep me from talking, because I could probably talk forever if you let me, I'm going to split the room into a rough groups of 3. Essentially, at your tables, I would like for you all to have a conversation on the question that I give your section. All right? Okay, so we're going to go this third of the room from this row of tables this way. Your question is, why is cultural safety important to you? You can speak from the point of view of lived experience. You can speak from the point of view of your organisations. You could speak from the experience of someone new to the country. Kei te pai. We just want to start the conversation of the differences of what cultural safety is. So, anei tō pātai, why is cultural safety important to you? Let me just move this way.
Who needs competency training? You can be real objective or subjective, it's up to you. Just think of who really in this are needs everyone to do it. It's like just thinking about tables, you'll what safety look like. Whether it's in your organisation, your practice, in your home, speak like what is that's who says things.
I didn't hear it. To order.
What does cultural safety do?
So basically, there's 3 sections. First question on the screen belongs to these guys, in the middle for these guys, and then the last one for that side of the room. Kia ora. I think we'll have about 5-ish minutes to kōrero, and then we'll start sharing.
All right, last 10 seconds. Start wrapping up your ideas, finishing your sentences. Anything you want to say it now, because otherwise we're going to cut you off. All right. Kia ora mai tātou. If I could get everyone's attention back to the front, I'm sure some of those conversations were either really intriguing or quite quiet. Either way, kei te pai. All we are here for is to introduce the ideas that we've been using, and hopefully you can take them back to your own wāhi and your own rohe to do the same. Essentially, what we want to tell you is that the way we do it is not the only way to do it. If there's a better way to do it for your organisations and your people, then kei te pai, do that. And so we're going to go across the room. If you would like to feed back to the room sort of the main kaupapa of the conversations you were having, that would be great. And like usual, I will bully the people on this side of the room, and we'll start at this side. So if anyone at this side would like to speak, raise your hand and Riiti will bring the microphone to you. Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou. Our kōrero was, why is cultural safety important to you? And we had patients are heard and validated and treated accordingly, so they have an authentic experience that is meaningful and relatable to them. We also talked about culture not just specific to Te Ao Māori, but other cultures, and the importance of first understanding people's background and their narrative, and historical trauma, and that everyone has their own story. And then Whaia here talked about, what did you talk about? It just stays with you, eh? It just stays with you, yeah. And also, I'm just going to add my little bit. It's important for me because when I'm with non-Māori, I need them to be safe. And so often I'm trying to keep myself safe. I'm trying to keep them safe so that the kaupapa is safe. And often I liken it to a first aid certificate. So you don't necessarily do cultural training once. It's something that's ongoing.
Exactly.
And I think that's really important. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you so much. And also on that point, even though cultural safety isn't just for Māori people, you can't treat every Māori person the same either. And that is, in essence, creating safe spaces, is that no here, ki here, no matter where you are, where you're from, you will feel safe in those spaces. So kia ora. To the other table.
Ngā mihi nui kia koe, ko Tānia ka ahau. Well, we had the same question, why is cultural safety important to you? But we spent 4/5 of the time doing whakawhanaungatanga. And yeah, and I think that's important because, you know, usually we start with a karakia and then we do our whakawhanaungatanga. So it shows that we wanted to get to know each other before we went into the question. So, and just keeping ourselves, a little bit of the discussion was keeping ourselves safe, being mindful of others, being mindful of tikanga, especially when we're going into people's homes or whares or tare, you know, just being mindful of tikanga and being mindful of who we are.
Te kaua tuatahi, respect other people's kaua.
Respect.
When in Rome, do as the Romans. When in Welly, do as the Wellies. Kia ora. Anything from our last table? Carl? We can move on, kei te pai, to our second group. Your guys' question was, who needs cultural competency training? Do we have any feedback to the room, everyone? Oh, kia ora.
Oh, no pressure. Kia ora. I think the question, or the counter question was, who doesn't?
Aye.
Actually, we need to move away from the clinical, non-clinical divides. We're all kaimahi working in our organisations. So it was around keeping everyone safe, both as, you know, as administrators, as nursing staff, as medical staff, you know, allied health. Everybody needs to be safe because, and it was overlap on the questions around the kawa and the kaiwhakaruru. Kawa whakaruru, say for example in Masterton, actually having that kawa and the tikanga that leads on to pono into that competency. The other question is around cultural responsiveness, but in order to do that, it's the training that's required.
You need to be competent in order to be responsive. So kia ora. From our other table, anyone? Oh, kia ora whahana.
Tarawhalawa, kia ora koutou katoa. So we talked about everybody needing, you know, like some cultural support, whether it's along a continuum of being aware and then being responsive and then working towards a level of competency. So I think it's a journey, you know, like for many of us. We talked about having different cultural models of practice and how to embed that within the organisations that we work within, what that looks like, what it should feel like as well, practicing tikanga, but also being mindful of the cultural capital knowledge that sits already within your organisation as well, leveraging that and maximising, but also valuing it, the same as clinical knowledge, the same as practice knowledge as well. So those are just some of the conversations that we were having.
Kia ora. Thank you, Wahana. All right, and then we'll head over to our last group. Just keeping in mind we've got about 6 minutes left, and we have been warned that people in the other rooms will probably start heading out. But kei te pai, we've got microphones for a reason, or you can just shout at me. Either way works. But yeah, we'll pass on to the last group. Does anyone in particular want to speak on your question, which was, what does cultural safety look like in your organisation? Anyone take up the wero? Oh, kia ora.
I've been told to stand when I speak, else I'll get a twack. So culture, I had a twack once. What does cultural safety look like in your organisation? And we were just discussing that it can actually look a little bit differently depending on your organisation and what the organisation's needs are. We have an example in the far north at Mahitahi. We actually hired a director of equity to help drive our equity focus and to enable the staff and the kaimahi that were working outside of the PHO to be able to engage appropriately with the communities that they were engaging with. So that's not a blanket statement. That is about who it is, where it is, and how it is happening. And as a part of that, we actually delivered a What Matters to Whānau and a Equity for Whānau service agreement that actually embodies all of those principles across the embedded service agreement as a PHO. And so as part of that, as an organisation, we needed to be able to deliver some cultural safety to our primary care network. That's my challenge. That's the next bit.
And what a beautiful challenge that is. Thank you so much. Anyone else from that big group of tables? Oh, kia ora.
Kia ora koutou, ko Dougal Thorburn Tukunga. So cultural we were like this group over here, and whakawhanaungatanga took up 2/3 of our time, and then we started with a little definition of cultural safety, and acknowledged there's bits to it around critical consciousness, in particular the aspect of power, and I think that is a key aspect that we need to consider, that we sometimes work in organisations that conscious of maybe unconscious of the power. So I think that is a real, in relation to other organisations, including Māori organisations that they may be partnering with, so that's important. Then we got into the aspect of particular leaders within the organisation being able to lead conversations that can help guide other members to engage safely. And we also talked about what safety looks like. And when we're looking at a population level, I think that, part of it is determined by the community. And so we, I think, are in at least in the organisation that we're referring to, are in early stages of assessing whether we are culturally safe. And I think this comes back to how do we enable the community voice more to know that the services are working for them. So is that fair? Yep. Yeah.
That was great. Thank you so much. I think we're going to wrap it up there because we've only got about 3 minutes left. So aroha mai, if any of you do have any more information, or if you have any questions specific for me and Riiti and how we do it in the South, here are our email addresses. So feel free either to come get in touch with us for the rest of the conference or to flick us an email. We're pretty responsive on those. Essentially, we can also open it up to the room. I think we could maybe take 1, possibly 2 questions, depending on how well I can answer them. If you do have any questions right now, feel free to raise your hand and Riiti can run over with the microphone and I'll do my best to answer it. Carl? Okay, that either...
Kia ora.
Thank you. That was amazing. Wasn't really a question, so I really appreciate that too. That was beautiful. Anyone else? This either means we did a really great job or a really terrible one. So, any other question? Cool. All right, well, we've got a minute left, and that means I've got long enough to sing, well, not sing, but wrap us up with a bit of a wāta from the south. So I'll step away from the microphones because I tend to be a bit loud, but all right. Tēnei te mihi kia koutou, mō tēnei wā. Thank you for having us. Thank you to the coordinators for having us here as well. I didn't think when we started this kaupapa that it would ever come as far as it has and that it will continue on. And so a really big aspiration for us is that we stand sort of on the work that has already been done before, but also this is work that our children and their children will benefit from. So he taonga tuku iho, nei rā te mihi, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ka haia tēnā haro ana te kahu I te parinui o pitirere tō ura ki ka pā, ki paka te kao e ka hā, ka moko te rai runga aura ki topa Panuki, te ara pene a kiwa, kaura neki, toa suoke te tai o panutini, kata epa kauaiwai o te rā, te whenua tapa hia, a taku tīpunai, tahu pachiki, kata ki konei e, he kata ki konei.